I'm delighted to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to join this very distinguished panel of experts. I did prepare a few slides that I'm hoping you can display at this point, because I'm going to briefly summarize what we've learned from the annual survey that the Institute of International Education does every year for called Open Doors. And in this Open Doors survey, we survey over 3,000 US colleges and universities and find out how many international students they have, from what countries, and how, no, go back to the first one, please. Back to the original one.
Go back, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, stay here for a little bit if you would. So we survey the number of international students in the US at the tertiary level, and a number of Americans studying abroad for credit back home at their home institution. This first slide is really just to show you the trend data, and I'm sure all of you know that the number of Chinese students in the United States grew very dramatically over the past decade, past 2 decades, I should say. And really, it took off after 2010, 2011, with more undergraduate students from China coming, and that really started driving the numbers up. Still many, many graduate students from China, but also very large numbers of undergraduates, and indeed they exceeded the number of graduate students in recent years. With the arrival of COVID, you're going to see the numbers go down, and I'm going to look at each individual one later. But I wanted this slide to show you the big gap between the number of Chinese students in the United States and the number of Americans studying in China. It's been a huge gap ever since the beginning, and we really got worse, of course, during COVID. So the next slide, please. And this is just the US students studying in China, starting in the year 2000. It had its ups and downs, but even at its height, it was less than 15,000 American students in China. And it started declining well before COVID, actually. The numbers have been going down for the past, I would say for the past 6, 7 years for various reasons. But with COVID, of course, and the closing of borders, the numbers fell off the cliff, and barely 382,000 students were in China in 2020-21. We have not yet got the data for 21-22 because we wait until the student goes home and gets credit for the work done. Please go to the next slide. This shows the number of students in China and the United States, which also fell off a cliff, but not nearly as steep a cliff with COVID. There were still, in this past academic year, over 290,000 Chinese students enrolled in US campuses. Some of them were studying remotely at home, but many of them remained in the United States and continued their education, mostly online. The curious thing that's happening now, maybe not curious, but noticeable, is that undergraduate students are, their percentage is dropping, and graduate students are becoming, again, the more prominent numbers. So next slide, please. And Chinese students still remain by far the largest number of international students on US campuses. As you can see, while they did go down 9% from the year 2020 to the year 2021-22, they still are far ahead of the second largest sender, which is India, but numbers from India increased by 19% this past year. And then the following 4 countries, the following senders, top senders, also some went up, some went down. The final slide, the next slide, please. So this, I'm just going to leave this on the screen. This is where my data comes from, and I'm hoping during the
Hello, Peggy. Can you open the microphone? We couldn't hear you.
Sorry, yeah, I just by accident hit the mute button. So yeah. I'm hoping that you can, during the discussion period, we'll be able to talk a little bit more about some of the reasons. And I know that my fellow panelists will also be able to share what's happening on individual campuses. But I just wanted to give a brief overview of sort of what the trends have been. And I will finally just close by saying we did do a flash survey, a much smaller survey this fall. And the good news was that the number of international students in the United States does continue to go up. So that's good news. But it still has a long way to go in terms of getting back to where we were. Thank you.